Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. It keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Music Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Rory O'Toole. That is capital O, apostrophe, capital T. For some reason, computers do not accept apostrophes whenever I try to fill out my name on any form. Or any form of documentation online. They just don't like apostrophes. And to make it even worse, everyone makes it a lowercase t instead of a capital T. I know it's a stupid little thing to complain about, but it just drives me nuts. But what keeps me sane is music, which is what we're going to be covering today. We will be talking about Taylor Swift, Haim, Phoebe Bridgers, and we have a little top 10 list for you guys. The top 10 things I miss the most about live music in this time of quarantine. Kind of wistful, kind of nostalgic. Kind of wish I could go to a concert right now, go visit a venue, go see a show. As soon as this ends, I'm going to try to go see as many live shows as possible because I am starving for some live music. It is really a hole in my heart, and I'm sure every music fan is starving to see some live performances again. But anyways, let's get right to the show. We're going to start out with Taylor Swift, but make sure to stick around till the end. So let's get into Taylor Swift's new album, Folklore. It is her 8th studio album. She's already got 8 albums. Wow. Yeah. Released on July 24th. Surprise album. Yes, pop artists love the great surprise album these days. Power of the internet, I guess. It was indeed announced on social media only hours before it was dropped. It was released about a year after her most recent album, Lover. Great Taylor Swift album title right there. The album was written and recorded in the isolation of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic with the help of producers Aaron Dessner, from The National, and Jack Antonoff, super producer, lead singer of The Bleachers, and was a former tabloid subject when he was going out with Lena Dunham. Don't know if any of you guys remember that, but I do. Pretty weird crossover that I never expected, and I guess we all kind of forgot about it. Anyways, Folklore, unsurprisingly, broke several global streaming records. Several, including biggest opening day for an album by a female artist on Spotify, selling 1.3 million copies globally on its first day, and moved more than 500,000 units in the United States within its first 3 days, marking the biggest debut week of 2020. The lead single, Cardigan, is the #1 song on iTunes, and she is dominating the charts and is poised to do so for a long time. And I hear, not going to bother researching it because it just makes me feel good, that Cardigan sales are going up because of that song. That is the cultural power of T-Swizzle. Gotta respect it. So obviously Taylor was expecting to tour this summer in support of Lover, but due to the national shutdown, that meant a change of plans for everyone. And so she took her unexpected windfall of free time to not only give us a new record and boost carding sales, but deliver a new sound and style to fans. So with this project, she's leaning into the indie rock and indie folk sound. She replaced the familiar up-tempo synths and drum patterns of her pop catalog with a more spacious, stripped-down structure that emphasized her beautiful songwriting, distinct voice, and accompanied with lots of piano, acoustic guitar. That's sort of where the chamber pop comes in as well, beyond just indie rock, indie folk, I guess. Her two most recent albums, Reputation from 2017 and Lover from 2019, didn't win any Grammys, which is not really a big deal for a star of her caliber, but for Swift, I think it was a chance to start from scratch and just go for a fresh sound. And moving away from her pop sensibilities or even Nashville roots, the songs off this project may not be the sort of radio favorites or party anthems we're accustomed to from her work, but the songs stay with you in a more meaningful way and I think reward multiple visits. There's just a lot more depth and layering to her songwriting on this, and even just the music behind it as well. It just has a depth to it that I haven't really heard in, stuff like her pop catalog. And that's not to discount her pop sensibilities, because what she did with pop music was amazing. But I think now as an artist, she's kind of grown beyond that and is looking to expand into new territory or come back and emphasize what's always been there, which is the songwriting, which we will be talking about a lot. So to the critical and fan reception, because everyone's got an opinion on Taylor Swift, so let's not forget to highlight that. Both critics and fans have had a largely positive reaction to the record. Has a weighted score of 89 on Metacritic, and that's the highest of her career. Just to highlight some other reviews, she got 5 stars from The Guardian, 4.5 stars from Rolling Stone, 4 stars from the British music journal NME, and an 8 out of 10 rating from Pitchfork. The Atlantic praised Swift for moving away from her reliance on first-person narration to an embrace of imagination. Fictions, poems, and biographies of figures she can put herself in, but without being trapped in Taylor's point of view. Just really expanding her songwriting ability here by moving outside of the Taylor experience, which I really appreciated, and so did critics. And so, yeah, NPR praised it for its sense of freedom and liberation, kind of what I was hinting at there. And I think Pitchfork summed it up nicely, saying, Folklore will forever be known as Taylor Swift's quote-unquote indie album, a sweater weather record released on a whim in the blue heat of this lonely summer, filled with cinematic love songs in search of a film soundtrack. Well, maybe once Hollywood starts going again, this will get soundtracked to a film, because it does have that sort of vibe. Fans and Taylor Swift fans, they're a passionate bunch. They have largely embraced the project, though I suspect, her more pop-oriented admirers will be disappointed with the shortage of bangers and jams. 2 essential items of the food pyramid, of the music pyramid, they're not really on here. I don't think there's a banger. I don't think there's a jam, but there's some anthems, and there's just great songs. Songs in the most traditional sense. And so many are taking it as evidence of her crossover ability and maturity as not only an artist, but as a person, which, looking at the lyrics, I can see that. But I don't know how mature her fans are, because according to publications like the Daily Beast, her fans actually doxed the author of the Pitchfork review, even though she got an 8 out of 10 from Pitchfork. You guys, we're talking about Pitchfork, which is not exactly mainstream friendly, but apparently they took umbrage with some of the criticisms in that Pitchfork review, or I guess it wasn't enthusiastic enough for their taste, and they ended up kind of doxing this reviewer, posting in her house address online, pictures of her, all sorts of personal information. all the kind of crazy stuff that happens when the internet decides you are public enemy number one. I feel for that Pitchfork editor because she actually gave a good review. It was crazy. But, you know, with the Taylor Hive, if you attack the queen, even if you didn't really attack, they think you did, they will sting you. And sting they did. Anyways, moving on to my own personal feelings on it. I'm someone who's always appreciated Taylor Swift as a pop artist, but I was always hoping she'd lean further into fully showcasing her songwriting because it's just so good. I was like, come on, let's emphasize this a bit more without all the pop distractions. And so I really admire the choice she made with this project and the direction she took it in. You know, I wouldn't call what she's doing innovative. It feels pretty typical of the indie genre with influences from Sufjan Stevens, Bon Iver, not Bon Iver. I've made that mistake and embarrassed myself at a dinner party or two. It's Bon Iver. Lana Del Rey as well. Sometimes a little too much, but yeah, big influence. And Phoebe Bridgers, who we'll be talking about later. All influences on this album, all sprinkled throughout. But nonetheless, it's effective, and the sound promotes the album's greatest strength, which, again, storytelling, narrative, lyrics, all of the elements that I love about Taylor Swift. And, you know, she's always been especially skilled at writing about love and romance. Any of us who've had a crush or been in a relationship have found something relatable in her lyrics, but this time she's exploring storytelling itself. Hence the title, Folklore. Yeah, kind of clever right there. For example, we have cuts like The Last Great American Dynasty, which is basically a historical first-person short story based on the life and times of Rebecca Harkness. Now you're asking, who is Rebecca Harkness? Well, Taylor Swift once lived in Harkness's mansion in Rhode Island. And you're thinking, mansion, how'd you get that? Well, she married into the Standard Oil family, and soon after marrying into the family, her husband died, and so she inherited all his money. You know what she did with that money? She lived an independent lifestyle, lived by her own rules, was an independent female figure at a time in American history where that wasn't always looked at in the greatest possible light. Now, that kind of tracks with Taylor's own feelings of herself and her fame. She feels like sometimes she has been taken down a peg, oftentimes unfairly, by not only males, but the media and American society writ large, where they're kind of judging her lifestyle and her choices in the same way that Harkness was being judged. So she kind of sees a kindred spirit in that figure. And so ultimately it's a way to celebrate women who live on their own terms. And that is very much at the core of the Taylor Tao. Live on your own terms, do what you want, do what makes you happy. She also takes us into the three different perspectives of a teenage love trilogy played out in the songs Cardigan, Betty, and August. Now, I'm not going to bore you with just how expansive and complicated that whole trilogy is. If you want to check that out, go on a Reddit board or a Twitter thread. It gets pretty deep. But yeah, it shows the conceptual aspects of this album. And just to highlight some lyrical standouts, since I've been talking so much about the songwriting, let's just highlight a few. So one that I really liked is from the track Illicit Affairs. Goes, "You know damn well for you I would ruin myself a million little times," she sings on that song. I just really like that line. Really speaks to the theme of that song. And then from Invisible String, "Cold was the steel of my axe to grind for the boys who broke my heart. Now I send their babies presents." Oh, just kind of a boss move, but also shows she's maturing. So you're getting the great sassy Taylor lines, but also showing that personal growth that this album is about. I love it. It's great. Another great one from Peace. goes, suddenly this summer it's clear I never had the courage in my convictions. As long as the danger is near, and it's just around the corner, darling, 'cause it lives in me, no, I can never give you peace. I mean, that's a professional songwriter right there, guys. That is great, great songwriting. And then just to round it off, we get my favorite lyric of the album. They told me all my cages were mental, so I got wasted like all my potential. That is clever. That's from the song This Is Me Trying. Just love that line. Just audibly raised my eyebrow when I heard that. That was just really, really clever songwriting from Miss Swift right there. And then to highlight some more songs, her Bon Iver duet Exile should be a crowd pleaser along with the album opener, The One. But if I had to recommend one song to you guys, I would suggest Betty. We get harmonica, we get some acoustic finger-picking guitar, we get vivid, funny lyrics, very folky, which is at the, elemental structure of this album. You got to have the folk. And even outside the context of the Love Trilogy story, it's just a catchy song about young, dumb love. It's going to be in the Taylor canon. Really enjoyed that one. It almost feels like it almost could have been placed on a previous album because it has that high school sort of imagery that we're familiar with Taylor Swift. But in the context of the album, it really is the next level of that, the more grown-up, more mature Taylor, which I think this album highlights. And, the yearn on this album is strong, and by yearn, that is yearn as in yearning. There's a lot of yearning on this album, which I love. One of my favorite features of music is a great yearn. She's yearning for love, happiness, to live on her own terms, to see not only her family or her friends, but just girls all over live the way they want to live. Stupid boys are going to come and go, but you got to do what makes you happy. It's almost a bit like a big sister sort of vibe you get on this album. And for the girl named after James Taylor, the songwriting is there, the musicality is there, the instrumentation and the choices made there. You definitely get big James Taylor vibes, and most importantly, the songwriting. It's would make James Taylor proud. And so I definitely recommend to listen. This is Taylor Swift, expanded, grown up, at her best. She's 30 years old. She's finally comfortable with who she is, where she is as an artist, and where she's going. And I think the best is yet to come. This is just a preview of where she can be. And hopefully when this all blows over, we can get a Lover tour and a Folklore tour. Only time will tell. We're going to take a break, but coming up, we're going to be talking about two of my favorite albums from quarantine. First, Haim's Women in Music Part 3.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
GSMC Music Podcast. Still rocking with Rory O'Toole. Now, we just finished recapping Taylor Swift's new album, Folklore. Fun conversation we had about that. Now we're moving on to what I previewed as my two favorite albums of quarantine. Number one being this one, Haim's Women in Music Part 3. third studio album, as you can probably tell from the title, from the Haim sisters, Danielle, Esty, and Alana Haim of Los Angeles, California. Not Haim. I know some of you guys say Haim. It's Haim. I Googled it. Okay. Deep research on that one. Anyways, the album was released on June 26th, and they had released a slew of singles in the months leading up to it, including tracks like Summer Girl, Now I'm In It, and Hallelujah. Overall, the album peaked on the rock charts in America at number 1, number 13 overall on the charts in the US, but with another number 1 overall showing in the UK. The Brits love the Haim sisters. They actually just announced a tour in the UK 2021, the Sister Tour. If any of our British listeners are tuning in right now, go check that out. It's a show that you're going to want to go see. The album cover was shot by Paul Thomas Anderson, who, like Haim, grew up in the San Fernando Valley, an area of LA kind of sniffed at by the trendier residents in the LA basin, in the Hollywood Hills, in LA proper, you might say. And he also shot 4 different music videos for the group, 3 singles that I mentioned, and the song The Steps. It's not bad to work with perhaps the greatest director of the 21st century, Mr. Paul Thomas Anderson, a.k.a. PTA. He is the director of classics like Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood. He is an absolute master auteur of film. Pretty amazing when you can get that guy to do your art direction, shoot your music video, shoot your album covers. That is a luxury most bands don't have. But, you know, it's because they're from the Valley, so to say. And the Haim sisters actually talked about this in an interview with The Guardian, with Esty Haim explaining, the Valley is still not cool, but it's such a big part of who we are. We ride or die for it. Growing up, we were surrounded by these virtuoso musicians, not the actual stars who lived in Beverly Hills or whatever, or wherever you get the actual stars, but like the backup guitarist for Pink Floyd or a session player for Pat Benatar. It was unpretentious, and these people would show up at our house and want to jam. So they got a lot of love, not only for LA, but LA specificity, San Fernando Valley to be exact. That's where the bond with PTA comes from. That is pretty cool. The album was produced by the trio of Danielle Haim, who's also a primary songwriter, along with her partner and longtime collaborator, Ariel Rekscheid, and Vampire Weekend's creative heartbeat, Rostam Batmanji, who is, perhaps the greatest, one of the best pop rock, indie rock producers of the 2010s, looks like into the 2020s with this project too. And the album basically plays out like our current reality. It's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. You got a few heartbreaking tracks, melancholy cuts, but you've also got upbeat songs, infectious jams that they're loved for. I think Women in Music 3 finds the trio at their creative peak and is my favorite album from them thus far. And fun fact, just to give you some knowledge on who Ariel Rekscheid is, because I like to let you know who these producers are because they're so essential to the record process, but they're not always known by the mainstream fans. He actually produced Hey There Delilah. That's how he got his first big break. Yeah, Hey There Delilah by the Plain White T's. Everyone's favorite song in like 2007 or whenever the heck that came out. Such a classic. Still lives to this day. And so I'd say, yeah, the album is basically a continuation of the sound we heard on Vampire Weekend's latest album, which is called Father of the Bride, which all 3 aforementioned names work together on as well. Obviously, Rostam was a big part of that. He's one of the founding members of Vampire Weekend. But Danielle made a few vocal performances on that album, too. She really shines on that project. Thought she did a great job. Really great collaboration. And like that album, this project, the sound is upbeat and wide-ranging. The lyrical content is emotionally courageous. The songs shift gears, always finding the right genre for the mood, and sometimes you get different sounds within the same song, transitions and shifting depending on the line or the chorus or the bridge. Really, really cool stuff. And for a band that has cultivated this persona of silliness and not taking themselves too seriously, it's clear that all three sisters were working through various levels of depression, challenges, and struggle. And basically this album was ultimately a way to put those feelings to music as a form of therapy and a way to move forward, a form of rebirth and a ode to resilience. Now, Haim has always had the ability to write a 70s style Laurel Canyon rock song. Take your Linda Ronstadts, your Jackson Browns, your Joni Mitchells, your even Eagles. They've always been able to do that kind of style rock music. Fleetwood Mac obviously is the one that gets pointed out a lot. But with this album, I think, and the way they've grown as artists, they're now able to push beyond that into new territory. Like tracks with the sad girl electro pop anthem, Now I'm In It, or the spacey, funky, some have even said early Michael Jackson sounding like 3 a.m. And we've even got a song explicitly about quarantine titled I Know Alone, kind of a G-Funk UK garage inspired song that explores the loneliness and depression that accompany staying in your house all day, nowhere to escape to. You got to develop those little routines to maintain your sanity, whether that's yoga, drinking coffee in the morning, going for a little walk to clear your head. Those kind of little routines that we're all dealing with, trying to build in this unstructured sort of life we're in right now. And they even created a dance for it, if you can believe it. For that depressing song, they created a dance for I Know Alone. It is kind of a physical expression of the song. It's not a happy dance, so to say, but if you're the dancing type, go give it a try. You never know, you might enjoy it. It's certainly a great dance video to watch if you're bored. Of course, the California Trio have not one, but two songs about their native Los Angeles. Come on. It's a Haim record. We're going to get some songs about LA, some songs about California. So the first one is aptly titled Los Angeles, and the other Summer Girl. Los Angeles actually opens up the album, and Summer Girl closes it, which is kind of nice bookends to this project. First, Los Angeles deals with actually kind of falling out of love with their hometown, and the conflicted emotions that accompany that. And then Summer Girl is kind of a reconciliation with LA and their past, so to say, since that's where they grew up. And yeah, it's just a great celebration of Southern California. You got some great lyrics about earthquake drills and overpasses. Anyone from California, especially from SoCal, definitely relate to that. And you got an excellent, lovable saxophone in the background. Adds a nice little quirky feature to that song. Also, some tracks to highlight. The Steps and Up From a Dream kind of have the same driving energy behind them with some great guitar licks. It's kind of like some early Lou Reedy sort of stuff. It's just a treat to listen to. Those songs bang in your car or your room. Then you got other songs like Another Try, which kind of exemplify their music growing, their palette expanding. You've got, I would say, a reggae-soaked kind of sunny day at the park, pop-infused record. Really fun song. And I never expected them to do some reggae, but they kind of kill it. And please put on the song Leaning on You, and tell me if you don't think that's Blackbird by the Beatles in the opening chords. You're just like, whoa, Beatles on? Oh no, it's Danielle Haim singing. Does a great job with that though. Great song, great acoustic kind of track. I've Been Down has a great opening line that says, I ain't dead yet, which is basically sets the tone for the song, which is a celebration of, overcoming the odds, appreciating how far you've come. And they even drop some Confucius wisdom with the pithy line later on in the song, "There's no stupid questions, only stupid people." You might see that in a doctor's office near you. And then we've got things like other songs, "Man from the Magazine," which is a great meditation on sexism from the music press and kind of industry as a whole. Very Joni Mitchell-esque. You see that Laurel Canyon influence creep back in. And, it's really fits on the album. Statement sort of song. Great track, great message. And then Don't Wanna, man. That's an absolutely killer rock song. The drums are simple, but they lay the perfect foundation for this classic Haim jam. I literally could not stop singing the words and repeating that simple but super fun chorus. It is just a great song that would kill in any guitar-driven era of music. It is so good. And then you've got Hallelujah, which is an emotional ballad written in honor of a fallen friend. I believe Alana Haim lost one of her close friends and wrote this song in collaboration with Danielle about her. And it's a very sad song, but man, it's a great ballad. Just fantastic ballad. And so overall, with this record, as Pitchfork summed it up, it's Haim as we haven't quite heard them before. Not just eminently proficient musicians, entertainers, and quote-unquote women in music, but full of flaws and contradictions, becoming something much greater. Couldn't have said it better myself. That really sums up this album. You get these ladies at times where they're not perfect. They're not feeling so hot about themselves. They've gone through breakups or received bad news about their health or about their partner's health or about, fallen friends. And just kind of the depression that it is living in quarantine right now. And so they turn that kind of puzzle of emotions into this kitchen sink of different genres and instrumentation and just lots of different sounds that you really don't usually expect to hear from Haim, especially as this pigeonholed 70s rock cover band that, their roots are in as kids. They literally were in a band called Rockin' Haim with their parents where they would just cover 70s rock songs. But yeah, they obviously do that really well, but this is them growing and expanding their music, especially, I know I'm always talking about the songwriting, but the lyrics on this thing are really great. Danielle Haim's really grown as an artist, and the music videos are fantastic. They're walking, as always. The only people who walk in LA are the Haim sisters, apparently. That's like their signature now. They just walk in all their music videos, which is hilarious. And so, it's bold. Best produced album, I think, and just filled with quality songs. Again, this record leaves us with the message that the sisters will always have each other's backs and help each other through. And that's kind of not only about Haim, but about us too. We gotta rely on the people around us, our families, our friends, to get through not only this moment, but just the journey that is life, that is growing up, especially in your 20s and 30s, like the Haim sisters are, trying to find yourself, trying to figure out who you are, what you want out of the world. It's just a great little journey that this album is. You climb all sorts of emotional peaks, all sorts of happy valleys. It really runs the gauntlet of what you want from a quality rock and roll album. So one song I would recommend if you're saying, Rory, okay, that's a lot you're throwing at me, but give me a song. I need somewhere to start. Put on Gasoline, aptly titled, because it's going to light a fire under you. Contagious guitar. Grabs your attention right away with beautiful harmonies, gorgeous vocals. please play it in your car. That thing is just fantastic. I also love the drums on that track. So yeah, Haim, great album. Definitely one of my favorites of the quarantine experience. Please go give that a listen. They did a great job. Catch you after the break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
GSMC Music Podcast. Still here rocking with your host, Rory O'Toole. Now, we just talked about Haim, Women in Music Part 3. Great album. Please give it a listen. Before that, we were talking Taylor Swift's Folklore. At the end of this, we'll be talking top 10 things we miss the most from live music, but let's get into it. Phoebe Bridgers just released her second studio album on June 18th, 2020. I'd say it's comfortably under the indie rock and emo folk album categories. It is tied with Haim's album for my favorite project during quarantine. And funny enough, Phoebe Bridgers is also from Los Angeles, from Pasadena, so not quite the Valley, but almost. And if you can believe this, she actually attended the same high school as all three Haim sisters, Los Angeles County High School for the Performing Arts. Obviously, they're separated by like 10 years, but what a weird little connection between my two favorite albums. I didn't even know that going in. I just found out in research. Really funny connection. But, you know, LA is producing talent, so I'm not surprised. Anyways, Punisher was self-produced with Tony Berg and Ethan Gruska, with extensive collaboration with her creative partner, Marshall Vore. Following her first release, she worked extensively with Julian Baker and Lucy Dacus on an EP called Boy Genius, and a collaboration with Connor Oberst before releasing her sophomore effort. So, in between album number 1, album number 2, a lot of artists have a lot of anxiety about the sophomore album, you know, the whole mythology behind the sophomore slump. But Miss Bridgers did not have that issue because she's been working. She's been in the studio working with people she admires and enjoys working with. So she's on top of her game, and you can see it reflected in the album itself. Now, it peaked on number 43 on the American charts, number 6 in the UK, and a high of number 3 on the Scottish charts. And yeah, I guess the Scottish love their sad music. I love you, Scotland. Any of our Scottish listeners, thank you for tuning in. Maybe you can enlighten us on why you like the sad girl music of Phoebe Bridgers so much, but for now, I only have theories that I won't bother throwing out there, but let's just say Scots appreciate Phoebe Bridgers in the same way I do, probably for her stark honesty and stunning songwriting, because that is what this project is full of, including crushing emotional vibes and big Elliott Smith energy. If you didn't realize she was a huge Elliott Smith fan, after listening to this record, you will see the influence clear, and she actually references him on the title track Punisher, which we'll be getting into later on. But yeah, the similarities between the two are very, very strong. And yeah, while the music is sometimes kind of unambiguous and standard, the songwriting on this is generational and exceptional in my mind. It's just incredible, sometimes overwhelmingly sad, but it's always smart and observational, and just, she has so many lines that just read like a Joan Didion novel with how poetic and sad and human they are. And funny enough, she actually cites Joan Didion, the great LA essayist, great novelist of books such as Play As It Lays, Slouching Towards Bethlehem. Great cultural figure of the 1960s, LA legend, California native. So it makes sense that she was a big influence on this record. And while the songs can be autobiographical, think of the song from her first album, Motion Sickness, which bluntly described an emotionally abusive relationship with her former mentor, Ryan Adams. Her lyrics are wide-ranging enough that it's not purely confessional. And like Haim, Bridgers was brought up with the music of Laurel Canyon, which I referenced earlier, but she came of age listening to emo, and that provides the spine of her work. So she doesn't sound anything like Haim, really. She doesn't sound very much... she's about as far as you can get from the Eagles, let's say. But, obviously that informed her taste and her passion for music, especially California music. And I'm not going to lie. This album, it's going to make you sad. It's going to make you... going to put yourself in your feelings. It's going to twist you up in emotional knots, but it's a journey that leaves us with the sense that the tears were earned, scars were formed, but ultimately Bridgers and the audience can hopefully move forward, maybe into calmer, peaceful waters. Who knows? It's a bit... you just got to take it day by day. That's kind of the message of this album. Appreciate where you are. Look back on where you came from, but don't let it stifle you either. But now that I've waxed poetic about her insane lyrical ability, let's get into the songs themselves. So, after the instrumental DVD menu that opens Punisher, we pivot into Garden Song, which starts with this dissolving guitar. You got synthesizers, kind of this dreamscape that's both beautiful and unsettling, sort of like seeing your reflection in the middle of the night. I know we can all relate to that. And funny enough, there's a lyric that mentions just that, which goes, "See your reflection in the water, off the bridge at the Huntington. I hopped the fence when I was 17. So, I got that vibe and then found that lyric pretty eerie, but it really accurately describes kind of that song and the lyrical content behind it. She actually explained to Zane Lowe of Apple Music that the song is, quote, very much about dreams, and to get very LA on it, manifesting. So, sometimes you hear people talk about speak it into existence in a positive sense, but Bridgers explores that in kind of the nightmarish implications of that. Okay, what if all your bad thoughts came to life, kind of like they do in our nightmares or in our dreams when our thoughts become fully realized in this dream world. And it's pretty scary. It's pretty unsettling, but the imagery of those lyrics are just really, really great. And, you're not going to hear them in many other circles, many other songs. She also laments in one lyric that I grew up here until it all went up in flames. And this is actually an allusion to when her real-life childhood home burned down a few years back. So that kind of reflects the autobiographical nature of her work that I referenced earlier. So after Kyoto, we move... I'm highlighting what we're going to talk about next. So after Garden Song, we move into Kyoto, which is probably the catchiest song on the album and the one closest to a traditional rock song. We even get a horn section, and you'll learn on this podcast that I am absolutely in love with horn sections. I love a good horn section. It just adds so much energy to every song. Just adds that layer of catchiness that this song has. The New York Times actually does a video series called Diary of a Song where they break down the origins and creation of any one song. And so they spoke to the producers and the co-writers and Bridgers herself. And they kind of talk about how they turned this originally really slow ballad into an up-tempo rocker. So Berg and Gruska, the producers, kind of detail that early on in the formation of the album, they realized they had a problem. There were way too many slow songs. Not entirely surprising with Bridgers, but they were like, come on, we need to get some energy in here, get some tempo. Berg recalled, I said, look, this song is great and the lyrics are incredible, but let's speed this up. Let's let it rock. Marshall Vore added, this one seemed to really like being a rocker. And guys, when you listen to it, it does. Catchy as hell. Definitely rocks. Just really, really good. It's a sad song, but it's fun. You can dance to it a little bit. And funny little anecdote about it. The trumpeter on the song, Nate Walcott, was dealing with serious tooth pain after chipping his front tooth, I guess. So it was just agony for him to play. But the nice guy that he was just too polite to say anything, even though they had him do endless takes, right? It's like, oh, that one sounded good, but can we go again? Okay, let's take it again. Poor guy was just dealing with all that pain and then forced to literally endure it over and over again. And it's just one of those songs that seduces you with its rhythm and tempo. And it's only after a few listens do you really get the beautiful and devastating lyrics like, I've been driving out to the suburbs to park at the Goodwill and stare at the chemtrails with my little brother. He said you called on his birthday. You were off by like 10 days. Just crushing lyrics. A little scene out of a short story almost there. So visual. So illustrative of Bridgers' talent as a songwriter. And then, like Punisher explores her admiration for Elliott Smith and the dynamic of punishers, the kind of fans who punish artists with just how enthusiastic and obsessed they are with their work, and how she basically would have been the same way if she ever met Smith. It's a great reminder that all musicians started out as fans and probably have someone they idolize and put on a pedestal and would absolutely talk their ear off in the same way that Bridgers is saying she would have with Smith, which is just, a nice little way to connect her with her fans that, hey, I'm a musician, but I'm not so different from my fans either. Other highlights include the breakup song I See You, and we also have what Bridgers described as the saddest track on the album called Moon Song. The happiest song may be Graceland 2, which had a few lines that I really enjoyed, like, doesn't know what she likes or what she's going to do, a rebel without a clue. That's just clever writing right there, ladies and gentlemen. And the album ends on this grand note with the closer, I Know the End, which is accompanied by these horns. Again, I love the horn section. Wave of instrumentation and, Phoebe even emo screaming at the end, and we get some existential musings thrown in with the closing lines. The billboard said the end is near. I turned around, there was nothing there. Yeah, I guess the end is here. Boy, that's heavy. That is some existential writing right there. But on the bright side, and I think what she's kind of hinting at is with the end of one reality or existence, or era comes the rebirth or beginning of another. So I think if you want to look at this optimistically, let's try to be positive, even though we are talking about Phoebe Bridgers. She does leave a layer of hope there, and I think what she's trying to say is she's ready to unburden herself of her past anxieties and worries and just work every day, hold on to the little things in the hopes that they, compound into something bigger and lasting. So overall, really enjoy the record. Obviously for different reasons than Haim, but the LA girls each provide, just different bites of music that appeal to all moods of both pre-COVID and post-COVID life. It's funny that they went to the same high school, and I ended up talking about them on this podcast. Just work together, tied together super well. I just love both these albums so much. And yeah, I just want to reiterate, I think Phoebe Bridgers is the singer-songwriter of this generation. Her lyrics are just amazing. Her song craft is second to none. I just love her narrative style, her poetic flourishes with some of her lines, the way she carries a story, the way she vocalizes it with her voice, because she's not the, most gifted, biggest singer, but she has this haunting voice coupled with her lyrics that just stay with you in the most eerie, devastating fashion. She is truly a master of songwriting and just storytelling through song. And that being said, Phoebe Bridgers, as sad as this album is, as just emotionally crushing it is at times, looks like she might have some love in her life right now. There's rumors on the internet, not to get too much in the pop culture zone. I don't want to step on any other podcast toes, but the star of the hit Hulu show Normal People, based on the book by Sally Rooney, which I recommend both those things. Paul Mescal, lead actor of that, plays Connell Waldron. Apparently, the rumors are he's dating Phoebe Bridgers right now. They've been spotted together in Ireland, his native land. So who knows? If she can find love, she can find happiness, we all can.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Music Podcast. We're finally talking about the top 10 things I miss about live music. Obviously, due to the pandemic, we won't be having live music for a long, long time. So in the meantime, I thought it'd double as a tribute to the magic of live music and as a fun little way to end the show on a positive note, because every music fan has opinions on live music, but more importantly, we all miss it so much. Just wish I could see Haim, Taylor Swift, and Phoebe Bridgers live right now, but obviously that's not going to happen. So let's get into it. Number 10, things I miss the most about live music. Number 10, the show. Capital S, the show. Not only just the music, but everything that comes with it. The whole affair, the whole experience that live music is, because again, it is more than the music. It is the laser show, the smoke, the light show, the sound, the acoustics of it all, how they accompany the stage and the fans, and it's just like a whole show. It's just like what makes live performances of any sort the best is it's an entire experience beyond just the form itself. Moving on to number 9, feeling the music. I'm talking about literally feeling the music. Anyone who has been close to the stage, maybe front row, maybe a few rows back, maybe you're just at a really loud show, when those notes, when the sound is literally vibrating through your body, it is one of the most powerful feelings you will ever experience in your life. It is both equally parts terrifying and just so thrilling, because you're literally feeling like those drums or that horn section or that guitar just blast through your body, through your brain, through your chest, through your legs, every part of you just moving through you, especially if you're right next to the speakers. I mean, it probably moves so your eardrums might break them. It gets pretty gnarly if you're next to the speaker. But yeah, I just miss that feeling of the physicality involved in live music. Beyond just enjoying the music, it's a whole physical experience too, beyond, dancing or throwing your hands up in the air. A lot of times it's feeling the music through you, and that's what's so special about being at a concert is you just feel the music in a literal sense beyond just the, more quasi-spiritual sense that people like to talk about. Number 8, how songs take on new forms and kind of live in that specific, special way and fashion for only this one small moment in time, never to be repeated again. That's what's so cool about live music. You might have gone to see Prince, and you're going to go see Purple Rain, but you know what? Prince is not going to play Purple Rain the same way he did in the studio, the same way it was on the vinyl you bought from him. Prince is going to play Purple Rain in a completely new way, a new fashion. He's going to add little flourishes. He's going to take away certain elements. He's going to add brand new ones. That is what's so cool about live shows, is artists like to constantly create with their work, with their songs, because it's not ever finished, really. It's constantly in relationship with the audience, with the vibe of the venue, with the feeling of the artist. What do they want to do? How do they want to express themselves? It all comes into play. And they've played these songs so many times, guys. So many times that they don't want to do the same song the same way over and over again. And I can't blame them for that, because it's awesome when you hear a 20-minute solo that you would never sit through on your couch when you're listening to music, but when you're at the show, you are fully bought in. You've got your seatbelt on. You're like, yeah, you want to do a 20-minute guitar solo of this otherwise 4-minute song? Go for it, dude. I'm here for it. I just miss that little improv and just unique nature that is live music and the way they just fiddle with songs. Number 7, the rush of happiness when the opening notes of the act's best or crowd's favorite song starts. Think of something like Enter Sandman by Metallica, or It Wasn't Me by Shaggy. When the opening notes, the opening chords of those songs start, the crowd is already bought in, super excited, already screaming like it's the climax of the chorus or the song. It is absolute peak energy from the very beginning. I miss that, just waiting the entire show for that song to get played. It's so invigorating once they play that song you've been waiting for all night. Yeah, I mean, if you want to see an example of this, look at Kanye West performing Runaway. And that song starts with just the one key on the piano, and the crowd is losing its mind as soon as he puts his finger on the key, and Kanye kind of starts to troll the crowd. He He plays the key, he waits dramatically, but the song doesn't start. The crowd's getting restless. He does it again. Oh, they think the song's going to start? Nope. He's just trolling you. He does it for like a minute and a half where he just keeps playing the key. You keep thinking the song's going to start. The song doesn't start. He just kind of has the audience in the palm of his hand. It's awesome and it's hilarious. But it kind of just speaks to what I'm describing here, which is, just one sound is all it takes, and you're so excited, so pumped because you're hearing your favorite song live by your favorite artist right in front of you. It's such a special moment. Number 6, which I can't believe this is number 6 because this is so high for me, but it just speaks to how much stuff I needed to fit on this list. Seeing the stage for the first time. Man, when you go in the venue, when you go to that concert, you buy your ticket, you finally get through the doors, you see the stage, you are absolutely enraptured. It's like seeing a museum and a famous piece of art in there for the first time, or seeing a famous landmark for the first time, or going to a sports game and you get to that point where you finally see the field, especially when you're a kid and you're like, oh my god, this is what I've been watching on TV all this time, this is all what I've heard about, the pictures, everything. Yeah, you're there. That's when the moment really settles in that, yeah, this is real. This is going to be my next few hours of life. I'm so lucky to be able to experience this. Yeah, it's just such a special feeling. Number 5, the band or artist's interaction with the crowd. I just love the fact of live music that there's a relationship. It's a two-way street. You don't get that same dynamic when you're just listening to music on your phone, at home, whatever. It's a very passive act. You take in the music, you either like it or you don't. At a concert, you can yell stuff at your favorite artist, you can try to get their attention, and they might look at you. Or you might say, play song Y, and they'd be like, oh yeah, you know what, I'm going to play song Y. It is, because it's a human-to-human interaction, it's so special, especially when you've just dreamed of that moment or dreamed of like making an actual impression on one of your artists, if you're lucky enough for them to make eye contact with you or acknowledge you in any way. And even if they don't, just like being in the crowd, it's like anyone from the crowd talking to the artist is almost them speaking on your behalf because you are this kind of one unit tribe for that night. And, think of Freddie Mercury at the Live Aid concert in London when he's just playing the crowd like a T, forcing them to sing, forcing them to get up, asking them for their energy. He had that crowd in the palm of his hands, and that was a two-way interaction which made that moment so special. And Freddie obviously brought the energy and the crazy amount of talent to that moment, but if he was playing to an empty stadium or on a TV set, it would not be the same magical moment that it turned out to be. And unfortunately, we don't have that right now, and I miss it so much. Number 4, the high after leaving a great concert. You know what I'm talking about. You're just buzzing with energy, with bliss, it's like you had 12 cups of coffee with none of the side effects. You are just ready to take the night or the day by storm after leaving that show because it was so amazing. It was so life-affirming. It was just this one-time special moment that you can't repeat again, and you're just so glad and so lucky to have experienced it. And also, I just love that moment when you walk out of the venue. I think everyone can relate to this because, especially indoor venues get so hot. That many bodies in one place, it's going to get really, really hot and sweaty in there. So that moment where you walk out into the night, especially night, and it's just cold, but it's so refreshing. It's kind of like jumping into a pond or a river in a hot summer day, and it's just the most refreshing thing ever. God, that feeling, you never feel more alive than after a great show. It's just so special. and you kind of ride that energy and that happiness for like the rest of your week. Sometimes it stays with you in a really powerful way. And yeah, it's such a special aspect of live music. Number 3, synergy with the crowd. And by synergy with the crowd, I kind of hinted at it earlier. It's kind of that indescribable feeling when you and hundreds of other, maybe thousands of other people are singing along to a song that like somehow validates your own fandom and like all the passion you have for the music. You're looking into the crowd and seeing all those like fists, in the air, faces of happiness. It's purely magical, and you kind of lose your sense of self and become just another piece of this larger crowd, this larger experience. It's truly eye-opening and unique and very hard to replicate. And I miss that aspect of it so much. Number 2, anxiety and adrenaline. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I just it's a good kind of nervousness, a good kind of anxiousness before any show. Along with the anxiousness, you get that adrenaline that accompanies going to any great concert. Just so thrilled to be there, so pumped to see your favorite artist, be at a festival, what have you. So it's the AA battery of the concert experience. It's that anxiety, that adrenaline. It is not going to be replicated when you're listening to Spotify in your living room or in your bedroom during quarantine, unfortunately. That's just the reality of our current moment. It sucks. But yeah, no, that adrenaline that you get, it's kind of similar to the high I described earlier of leaving a concert, of when you're like in a mosh pit or in a great crowd and just riding that wave of a moment of music. It's truly special. And it's almost like you're in an extreme sport, or you're doing anything where your adrenaline is up, any kind of extreme situation, because it is that unique, that special of a time to be somewhere. And that is in its most safe, pure, but also fun way. And like I said, not going to be feeling that for a long time. So number 1, let's get to number 1. The biggest thing I miss about live music is the community. Because we have our families that we're dealt, and then we have our chosen families, our friends, the people we want to surround ourselves, and that includes the music we listen to and the fandom we become a part of. That is a huge appeal of being a fan of music. Following music is the communal aspect of it. Talking about the albums you love the most, the songs you love the most, building up the excitement of when an album is going to be released really soon. It's nothing different than sports fans or fans of, K-pop or Harry Potter books. It's all the same. That community that you get from being a fan of, you could be a Deadhead, you could be a Taylor Swift fan, you could, like I said, be a K-pop fan. That's a strong emotion that is literally a part of your identity, and especially when you're at a live music show, you feel the community, you feel that you're with your tribe, you're with your family, and it's really hard to replicate that in our current moment. But, hopefully by revisiting these top 10 things I miss the most about live music, we can kind of live in that moment for a little bit before returning to the daily grind of our life right now. But that is my top 10 list for things I miss the most about live music. It's a lot of fun to do. Anyways, that is it for the show. Time flew by, but time is precious, so I won't keep you guys any longer. Again, Thank you for listening to the GSMC Music Podcast. This GMC Music Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you. Have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.